Cool, we can probably get started.
Yeah, probably we can get started, almost there. Just really want to make sure everybody can hear us okay. Yeah, awesome. Amazing. Thanks everyone so much for being here. Just to introduce ourselves briefly, we are from Personio, the intelligent HR platform. My name is Rita. I am the solutions expert and I have Ben with me here.
Hi everyone, I'm in our corporate strategy team.
So today we're going to talk about how work is changing. I don't think it's going to be a surprise to anyone that AI is really making things quite different than before. We're going to talk about how to keep our people, our organizations in line and moving in the same speed. And really the simplest way we found how to put it, what's happening in the current environment is AI moves fast, but trust breaks faster. To describe this moment in time, I'm going to borrow the words of our VP of People, Susie Rogers. She spoke at one of our events recently, Making AI Work, and she said, the hardest part isn't technology. It's keeping people's trust in leadership, answering questions you don't know the answers to, and leading through uncertainty when we're still figuring out ourselves. Trust is an essential part, essential ingredient in our AI context. This session is designed to be practical, interactive, so we're going to ask you some questions in a moment. We'll share a few patterns that we're seeing across the UK HR teams, and we'll also share a few plays with you so you can take these away back into your work and hopefully start adapting them in your organizations. So let's get some context for this. According to KPMG, 40% of British jobs could experience disruption due to AI. 40%. This naturally creates a lot of anxiety for people, for employees. So I just want to ask you, actually, the room, do you think this number is too high or too low? Let's raise the hands, those people who think that 40% is actually really optimistic, that actually this is not going to be such a big change and much less roles will experience disruption. So who thinks it's going to be less? One person so far, very good.
We need it. No, it's good. Contrarians are good.
I love it, exactly. Who thinks it's going to be much higher than 40%? Nice. I don't want to be too blunt, but you did not surprise me with such a divide. Indeed, most people feel like it's going to be much higher, much larger wave of disruption and change. How many of you are feeling anxiety, or at least heard your employees saying that they feel anxiety about what is going to happen? About half, 50% or so? That also tracks.
So I guess if there is this potential situation and we have some anxiety in the room and in our companies, what's the problem with that? Like, what's the real issue for us? Well, what we've found in our Workforce Pulse survey is that if an employee feels that their job might be at risk of disruption due to AI, they're already 40% likely to be looking for another job. So that's a real latent retention risk that's sitting there right now. And so that's something that we all, as leaders, need to be really aware of. So I guess the real question is where is that trust breaking down between company and employee? And our guiding question is actually, how do we build trust when the ground around us with AI continues to move daily, hourly, by the minute?
The first thing to do, we've identified, is to really listen for those early signals that trust is slipping in your organization. So through conversations with a lot of HR teams, through our Workforce Pulse research, we have found that there's really 4 big topics. Firstly, we see that questions go private. From previously handling difficult topics, challenging each other publicly in public forums, employees are moving into private channels. Second thing, slower decision and delivery. More clarification loops and rework because people are too afraid to take ownership. They feel the need to ask for more guidance from their upper level management. And also lower motivation to go above and beyond. Where, as before, people may try to stretch themselves, now we see that people stick to their job description only because they feel too afraid to break out of it and stretch themselves.
I mean, maybe before we go into that, do any of us actually start to see some of these signals in our day-to-day already?
I'm
seeing the head nods. We don't have to put the hands up yet. I think that tracks, right? It's what it's showing is we have this anxiety, people have a trust gap, and we're starting to see that show up in behaviors. So really now is the time that we need to start acting on that. And so what we've figured out, or what we believe is like, when we really come down to where this trust is breaking down, there's probably 3 big drivers that are pushing this forward. The first is information gaps. So there's the information asymmetry across the business, and people fill that with rumors, and that leads to a trust breakdown. The second is around involvement. So change can feel top down. We don't include people in how we're going to change with AI, and maybe not even really enable them through training as well. And then the third piece is around signal gaps. And this is basically, as we're actively managing a change, potentially not using data, leaning into data to see where we're having signals that the program isn't working as we intended it to, and actually responding to that and having a feedback loop. So what we want to do today is basically focus on these 3 big gaps and equip all of you with some plays and how you can start dealing with this from tomorrow. And really the first one comes down to move fast, but communicate faster. And in my job in the strategy team, where we're thinking about the whole company of Personio, this is something that I think is so important and we're often overlooked to really start any program. And where that begins is, it's not rocket science, but define the goals in a smart way. Getting really clear on what you want to do will force your teams, your departments, the company to really align around a common and shared purpose, and you will know what that purpose is. The second is over-explain. Now, I work in strategy. Often we talk about vision statements, company strategy, how do you get that to the teams? I mean, often I swear I'll say something and ask someone on the corridor and they might be like, oh, I didn't hear that. And I'll say, well, I said it in this Slack message, or I said it over here, what do you mean? We have to over-communicate, sometimes 5, 10 times more than you expect to make sure the message is really sinking into people. And a really great part of this is the management layer. So you all probably have managers. They can be your first line of defense to communicate out any goal, any message. So equip them with a toolkit, FAQs, clear messaging, and help them be stewards of the program. And then the last piece is really a communication rhythm. So talk to the company and say, hey, on this date, this is what we would like to do and what we are going to be doing until then, and we will come back to you at that point in time to discuss what we did. It's not rocket science again, but it shows that you are saying one thing and actually then going out and doing it. And that will build trust as you keep going through this process.
So once we have our goals aligned and clarified first, then we can look at the step number 2, which is bringing your people with you. This is a really important step because I think a lot of people, especially people who are shy of technology, they can get left behind. So what's important is to actually make sure that they feel included. The way that we found work best is if we start small first, name the people who need to participate, and then scale with time. We found that pilot groups, 8 to 12 people, work best. Those technology curious people can actually iterate the programs to fit your organization's culture, way of learning, and actually encourage others to engage. We also found that training won't be a surprise probably to many of you, is the core part of any successful program. So we have to equip people and enable them to understand what the technology is as well as what the project goals are. And lastly, adjust based on what the pilot team is telling you. So constantly listen and reiterate the program to actually align it to the feedback that the pilot team is sharing. We actually want to put an extra point on training and enablement, because in Personio Workforce Pulse, we found that AI enablement consistently aligns with better outcomes for the organization. What that looks like in data is that enablement is really not a nice to have during AI change, it's really fundamental. Look at the gap there. Productivity, motivation, and even trust in the senior leadership all drop sharply when people feel inadequately trained. Or another way of putting it, career satisfaction and trust in the leadership almost doubles if we have the adequate training. So when we talk about trust plays and AI rollouts, we're not talking about poster slogans, we're talking really about practical support.
And then lastly, I guess we're at the point now where we have goals, we have a rhythm, we've got a pilot group, and we figured out how we can actually think we can scale the program. Now we actually need to scale that change across the organization. And when we go through that, what we need to do is make sure we're continuing to listen as we scale. So what does that really mean? It means really let's lean into the data and what data you can access, e.g. via Personio. So really, and when you're looking at this data, think about adoption, not just sentiment. So it's not enough to say, oh, do you like using this tool? Do you roughly use this tool in your day-to-day basis? Try to get actual adoption metrics. Are people using this on a daily basis? Can you see their behavior changing and actually how they're getting their work done? And the data is going to tell you that, not a qualitative survey. Also, look out for the gaps. So the pilot is really great because it helps you sort of figure out what might work in a smaller scale. But ultimately, when you scale to your organization, edge cases come up. We all know this. And when they come up, you need to be able to identify them and adapt to them. So it's another really important reason to keep a lookout as you're in this scaling phase. And then the third piece is around closing the loop publicly. And this sort of goes to our point earlier around communication. It's really saying, hey, we intended to do this, we observed X, and actually based on that, we've learned a bunch of things, and this is how we are changing our behavior. And so doing that publicly just really signals to the company that there is trust, we're working through this together, we have the involvement, and yeah, again, it's not just a top-down fixed sort of program that we're running through. So this one's often overlooked, but it can be super powerful. You can also appreciate some things just can't be spoken about publicly, but where you can, try to weave this in to really signal that trust. Okay, so fair amount of information, but we want to make sure that this is actually practical, because we started the conversation saying that really a lot of this is happening to us right now, and some folks in the audience already said that they're starting to see these trust signals or the trust breakdown signals starting to exist. So what can we get started with, from tomorrow or next week? First of all, it's really to think about your goals in this current situation. So if you're going through a rollout, what is going to be that rollout? Or if you want it to scale it down to a particular team, what does that look like? And set up the communication rhythm. The rhythm could even just be with your own team. Hey team, we want to meet up once a week to discuss ABC. In the next 4 weeks, we want to hit this point, and that's our goal. Doesn't have to be world-changing just yet. The second is, once you've landed that, ship the manager kit. And what that means is just make sure you're leveraging those managers to keep the people involved, or people who need to be involved, aware of what's going on. Because you can imagine if you start to set some goals, start moving, but then employees haven't actually been brought into that moving, again, can create rumors in the information gaps. That can also be pretty quick. AI can definitely help you on that one. The third is around the pilot team. So if you feel like you're actually at a more mature stage and you've got some goals and you've figured out what you want to do in a rollout program or a change program, just start to define the pilot teams. That might be one team, it might be a group of teams. I often find going where you think the pilot is going to be successful is a great way to start, to get wins on the board and learn, and you can move from there. But hopefully, at least one or maybe 3 of these things, you can actually get started next week.
So now that we know our homework for next week, I'm going to close out again with the quote of our VP of People, Susie. The hardest part is not technology, it's keeping people's trust. Thank you very much for being with us here today and for your time. We'd love to continue conversations with you at Personio Stand there. And I hope and wish you success to keeping trust in your organizations during this change.
Great, thanks everyone.